So I already know Mauga's getting buffed. I got word from it from a Stylosa video, but I'm pretty sure most of the info's on Overwatch's Twitter. I just wanted to put my input on how he should be buffed. Because I played him for like 8 to 9 hours during the limited event, and don't get me wrong, he's a lot of fun to play. One of the most fun I've had playing another character in Overwatch in a very long time. But he definitely does need some work. The main places being he just needs like more tankiness, like just more tank type abilities, just so like he could stay alive and have more survivability in general. Two, more damage. He more damage definitely needs to be explored. I'm not saying like a significant like amount of damage because he definitely does a lot of damage, but I'd say like a slight increase into his damage would be good. Um, I haven't heard anybody talk about this one, but I definitely think his overall should be buffed as well. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then lastly, his I don't know if it necessarily does need to be explored because I already know um Overwatch is already looking the Overwatch devs are already looking into how to make Mauga more tanky. For example, his overrun, they're thinking about buffing the damage reduction in his overrun from 30 seconds to something a little bit higher. But if the tankiness and having like more damage reduction or overhealth or armor, whatever it is, so he can have more survivability is not like explored heavily, then I definitely feel like him having his ult more often should definitely be explored. Um, just because he could definitely still use his like a shield tank opposed to the traditional way that it was used in the trailer or like a lot of people that were using it during the limited event. So this is one of the posts I was talking about that I found out from Stylosa's video. This is from Aaron Keller, from his Twitter, talking about how they've already gotten some feedback from the Mauga limited event and they're already working um on changing him based on the feedback that they got. There was another post that I saw about the damage reduction for Overrun being buffed and that it was supposedly initially 30% and that they were planning to buff it. I can't find it. All right, first things first, looking to explore damage reduction and more of Mauga's kit and abilities. I feel like this is the best route they could go for in terms of not changing too much of how Mauga's already played from what we've seen in the limited event. I feel like if they added like a lot of armor to his armor, over health, another heal ability or something of the sort. I feel like if they did those type of things, it would change how Maga's played, opposed to just adding damage reduction to his already known abilities like Berserker and Overrun. I don't feel like he'd change too much. Just that he would have more survivability, more tankiness, be able to hold more positions, etc., etc. So starting with his overrun, which we already talked about, that supposedly his overrun already initially has 30% damage reduction and is looking to be buffed. I don't feel like I need to talk about this much. So I don't know what would be the perfect amount of buff for his overrun damage reduction if it is 30%, but we already talked about it being buffed. Um, I feel like his Berserker should have damage reduction. I don't know if it would be 50%, 60%, I don't know. But I feel like his Berserker should have damage reduction just because it's too reliant on those heals. And in those situations that he gets onated or discorded, or in the event that he's not in a situation that he could spray by using both guns, and he has to like use one gun, shoot a few bullets because he's like in a 1v1 situation with a squishy, the berserker ability is just way too weak and it's way too easily countered. In a situation that he's going against Ana and he pops his berserker ability, then Ana nade comes in, it's like it's a wrap and he just dies. There's literally nothing he could do about it. So in the event that let's say Ana does nade him when he uses his berserker ability, or she just nades him and then he uses berserker directly after, if he has like 50-60% damage reduction in his berserker, not only could he possibly stay there, and wait for the nade to just wear off and then him to get healed, or he could just pop it and then run to cover, get behind the wall, jump back to his supports, opposed to just like getting shredded and he's just like there's nothing he could do about it. And then in situations that he's like in a 1v1 scenario against a squishy like a DPS or support, and like let's say he's getting low from the support or DPS, the berserker ability is not gonna help him at all from how it is from right now, because it's just like he's gonna get 1-2 bullets into this support or DPS, and it's not gonna heal him a significant amount like he's hog. It's just gonna cause like maybe plus 10, plus 15 to his health, and in a 1v1 scenario, that's not going to do anything for him. It's going to be way less than a small health pack. So adding damage reduction in those situations as well when he's in a 1v1 scenario would give him a greater chance to confirm his own kills opposed to his teammates having a big impact on him in this situation, like him just screaming for heals or just having another teammate help him out in this situation because he's getting low because of the support or DPS, and not being the quote unquote tank that he is and just able to take all this damage and just like give it right back at them. So something else I want to talk about with adding more damage reduction to Mauga's kit. If they did add damage reduction to his Berserker, and Overrun does have damage reduction that is looking to be buffed, it's possible that they could do something, like the Overwatch devs could do something, that his damage reduction stacks. So for example, let's say he's looking to run into the enemy team and he just pops his Berserker ability, and then right after that he jumps into his Overrun because he has both abilities active. Then let's say his Overrun's 30% damage reduction and his Berserker would be 45% damage reduction. In that moment that he's running with his Berserker, then he would have 75% damage reduction. So I don't know if this would be a good thing or a bad thing, but it's just something I thought about. You guys could tell me how you guys feel about it. I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing. The only reason I say it would be a bad thing if his Berserker just has too much damage reduction. Like let's say it's like 60% damage reduction and his overruns let's say it's going to be 35% damage reduction. When he has both abilities active, he's going to have 95% damage reduction, which is way too much when you consider somebody like Ramatra, which I think in his Nemesis form when he's blocking it's something like 70% or 75% damage reduction. But also don't forget he loses a lot of movement speed when you're thinking about Mauga possibly having more damage reduction than Ramatra when he's in his Nemesis form with 70% or 75% damage reduction on top of the fact that he'd be inside of a movement ability. It's definitely way too broken, but this could be an interesting tech, like a really cool interesting tech. But I don't know. I don't know. Now, going into increasing his damage, I don't think it's anything crazy. If you're considering him to be a hit scan tank and shooting down these high flyers, he definitely needs a bit more damage just so he could kill them more effectively and more efficiently. It also wouldn't be bad for him to be more effective at a distance and at range, because if you played Mauga during the limited event, it felt like you were only super effective when you're just jumping into the enemy team. So I definitely don't think it would be a bad thing for him to be a little bit more effective at range. First thing that comes to mind is something like Ramatra, how he could be in his staff form and just like shoot you out a little bit, but then he goes into his Nemesis form and gets up close and is very aggressive. So something a little bit like that. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but that's the first thing that comes to mind with him being a little bit more effective at range or at distance or being more of a hit scan, etc., etc. Now going into buffing his overrun, what I meant by this is essentially the stun of his overrun. So I don't know if you noticed when you played Mauga, but when you do the overrun and then you could stop it by jumping, and he jumps down and you see this little bit of a crater around his body. There's two things that this crater causes to the enemy. One, if he drops directly on the enemy, then it causes them to get stunned and displaced. They'll be like slightly in the air, but at the same time stunned. But what mostly happens is if you don't drop directly on them when you jump right after the overrun, it's just that you get displaced, so you're kind of just in the air for a little bit. And I don't think it's super effective. I feel like it's really weak because number one, you don't displace or stun if it's behind the shield. So a lot of times when you do this overrun and you jump onto Orion and his team, it's not going to do anything at all, and you're going to be stuck in this animation from after he just jumped from the overrun, opposed to you getting that displacement or stun while you're stuck in this animation. So I feel like his overrun, this crater should just everything within that crater should just be straight up stuns, similar to Reinhardt's shatter. So when you see a Reinhardt shatter, everything on the floor that you see this big crack and crater, everybody in that radius gets stunned. But then when you think about Mauga's overrun, everything in that crater is not a stun. I get it. Overwatch is kind of trying to step away from this whole stun thing, but I don't feel like this displacement thing or whatever is like super effective. So what I mean by this overrun tech or thing that not being super effective, let's say in the scenario you're Mauga, right? And there's a Ana and she's hiding in this little room or cubby or it's some DPS or other support, and they're going into this little room or cubby, and you're going to challenge them because they're by themselves in this little room, and you're going to confirm this kill. So now it could be a 5v4 situation, give your team a better advantage, right? When and you overrun and go into them and then you jump on them and hoping to get this stun animation, it's difficult to perfect this stun animation because you're dropping directly on them. So on the count that you're overrunning into them and they see you coming at them, most likely they're not going to just stand in one place and wait for you to hit them. They're going to try to move out of the way, run out of the way, do something so they don't get caught by the overrun. So where you're trying to aim for this stun will probably not be the same place that it lands, and they're probably just going to be displaced because they're going to do something to move or try to get out of the way so they don't die. And when you're thinking about a game like Overwatch 2 where everybody basically has an escape ability, the displacement is just going to work against Mauga. So like let's say he uses this overrun jump on an Echo, she's just gonna end up just flying away. If he uses it on a Pharah, she's just gonna fly away. If it's a 76, he's just gonna just keep running as he was initially when he heard your overrun, and etc. etc. It's just not gonna work to Mauga's favor if it's just a displacement, opposed to him just having a full stun in this overrun so he could quickly and efficiently confirm this kill, opposed to trying to stun and displacing like 85% of the time, and this said character just using their escape ability, and him and Mauga gaining no value off of this, even though he made the right play for the right situation. Lastly, going into increasing the amount of times Mauga has his ult in a game, I basically talked about the whole thing in the beginning of the video. If they're not going to make crazy advances to give him more survivability and more tankiness, then him having his ult more should be explored so he could use it similar to a shield tank and just using it to hold certain positions opposed to the traditional way of catching them in this trap. I definitely don't think they're going to go down the route though of not providing him more tankiness or survivability, so I don't think this is a problem or anything to worry about. In terms of how his ult is right now, I personally don't have a problem with it. I definitely know that his ult is not a strong or one of the strongest ults in the game, but I still think it's effective in the sense that it's a really good combo ult. If you're thinking about something like a Pharah, he Mauga pops his ult, your Pharah just ults from overhead, gets like 3 of them, or a Genji, you catch a lot of them, and Mauga catches a lot of enemies in his ult, and then Genji just drops in Dragon Blades, or even Mauga uses his ult, catches 3 4 people, and then you have a soldier 76 behind just using visor outside of the shield, so he basically has 1,200 shield in front of him, so he could freely just kill as many people as he wants. Definitely don't think there's a problem with his ult. In terms of everything I talked about buffing Mauga, obviously not providing all these buffs to Mauga at once or providing all these buffs, because he'd obviously just be way too broken. All these are just considerations. It's more just like ideas in a hat that you could just pick and choose a few of them and not take all of them. But this is the way I think Mauga should be buffed from everything I've seen and all the time that I played with him. You guys could just leave suggestions in the comments or what you guys think about it. Anyways, I hope you guys liked the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and peace.